Wow.
They paid $120.
We on? Okay, great. All right.
Let's get through this meeting here.
Yes. Okay, it is 5:02. I call this meeting
Recording
to order.
in progress.
Okay. So for the records, my name is Huang Tran, Chair of FedRacs. On my right side is committee members Erica Norton, and on my left is another members, Mr. Dovey, and
Want us to introduce ourselves?
huh?
Do you want us to introduce ourselves?
Would you please? Because my mind still, because my
Deputy
mind
Mayor
still
Susan
operate
Honda.
under Barcelona time. So
The world traveler.
You've been gone too long.
yes.
So, Council President Kochmar, and we have,
Councilmember Jack Walsh.
Welcome. Susan.
What?
Deputy Mayor.
Oh, Deputy Mayor Susan Honda, but I thought I did that already.
No.
No.
I'm sure I did. Listen to, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Lydia. Oh, and Zoom.
Lydia, would you like to introduce yourself?
I know I talked.
Yes, hi, I'm Lydia Zapadosa, council member.
Thank you. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, well, let's get into business here.
Thank you for backing me up, Lydia.
Anytime for everybody.
Do we have any public comments? We have no public comments. No public comments, thank you. We are moving on to item A, approval of summary minutes for May of 2022.
I move adoption.
Second.
So we have a motion and the second to adopt the approval of the summary minutes of May 2022. Is there any other questions? Here none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The matter passed 3-0. We are moving to item B, increase in funding for park equipment's replacement. EJ?
Good evening, Chair Tran, members of council. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right. So my name's EJ Walsh. I'm the Public Works Director. And with me tonight, I have John Hutton, the Parks Director, as well. So as most of you know, Public Works is in charge of the city fleet, excluding the police department cars. They handle that themselves. But so that is why I'm the one, since this is fleet, presenting tonight, even though we're talking about parks equipment. But to that end, as I mentioned, Director Hutton is here as well and can also certainly speak to the parks' use of this equipment. And if the slide advances, we'll be all set. There it goes. So the policy question before you tonight is, should City Council authorize an increase in funding for parks equipment replacement? So a little bit of background information. So 2 pieces of parks equipment were included within the budget for replacement. At the time that we prepared the budget, we had state contract pricing for both of these pieces of equipment, and the prices have changed since that pricing was obtained in 2019. And the contract pricing from 2019, even with the inflated cost that was included in the budget, is no longer sufficient to replace them. So the 2 specific items, the first one is a 2006 Vermeer Chipper, and there's a picture of this on the next slide. The intended replacement was 2018. As I believe council members are aware, we have 2 policies that we operate fleet under. The first is we don't replace equipment unless it's catastrophically damaged, until it reaches its lifespan that we assume based on the initial purchase time. And then the second policy is we do not replace equipment until it is more expensive to maintain it than it is to replace it. So what that means is this piece of equipment was eligible to be replaced based on the capitalization schedule in 2018. However, in 2018, the condition of the piece of equipment was still in good enough repair that it wasn't warranted until this cycle. And why that's important is the way we capitalize equipment. We capitalize it based on the purchase price when it's made. So this effectively, for this one, effectively ends up being a 4-year cost increase over time that wasn't figured in when the initial price was figured for capitalization. But we didn't replace it either, but we didn't accrue more money to replace it. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. So the budget included $41,680 for this replacement. Since approval of the budget, this one it's a little bit of a twofold conversation. So the Vermeer, the manufacturer, has also redone their product line. So the exact replica that we have is no longer made. So there's one that is substantially smaller. Ours is a 14-inch chipper. There's one, the next size down is a 12-inch, which has substantially reduced capacity. That one is still $29,000 above our available budget. And then the one that is most comparable to what we have is actually a 15-inch, so it's a 1-inch increase in capacity. And that one is $37,500 more to replace. So just as a point of reference, that is the current model chipper. This is the 1500, the one that is actually available to purchase. So just specific to this piece of equipment, this is used by Parks, Public Works, and Police. Police uses it for seizure of illegal marijuana plants. And it's used for both daily and emergency operations. This piece of equipment is used pretty much every day. The second piece of equipment is a 2005 Sandpro Infield Groomer. It was kind of the same story. It was intended, based on when we originally purchased it, to be replaced in 2017. The approved budget for 2022 included $28,000 for replacement of this item. For this specific item, the manufacturer in 2021 renegotiated state contract pricing, which led to an increase in price by $5,000. This is a picture of the current model that's available on state contract. That is an exact replica of what we have today, and it's also the one that's spec'd. So again, as background, this is used exclusively by the Parks Department for Celebration Park, and they use it for both routine maintenance as well as to prepare fields for tournaments. So a little bit of summary, just so all the numbers are on one page. The chipper budgeted was $41,680. The actual replacement contract value on state contract, inclusive of tax, is $79,180, which leads to that shortfall. The Sandpro is $28,000 budgeted. The replacement cost is $33,000, which is a $5,000 shortfall. So the combined shortage is $42,500. Both of these pieces are available through state contract. So these are actual prices, assuming we purchase them in the next 90 days. So the reason we're here tonight is the fleet budget for parks specifically does not have sufficient funds to replace these two. It's that $42,000 shortfall, excuse me. So we are requesting an increase in budget authority to replace these two pieces. And then as catch up as part of the next budget adjustment, we will need to fund and amend the budget to match this. The options before you are to approve an increase in funding for parks equipment replacement, or to do not approve an increase in funding and provide direction to staff. Mayor recommends option 1. And as I mentioned, both myself and Director Hutton are here for questions.
Thank you, EJ. Committee members, do you have any questions for EJ? Mr. Dovey?
I have a question. So are you proposing to buy these now and then reduce your budget in the next biennium by the amount that we're going to capitalize these from?
You want me to take
I
that,
mean,
EJ?
Is there
Sure.
replacements, things that you won't do next year because you need it now?
No.
I think what we're doing is we're coming to you because we need the additional budget authority, and we're looking at the vehicle rotation, the vehicle replacement, which we're going to revise going forward anyway, and so this is a small amount. It's easily doable.
Are we going to look at the way we replace product in the future so we don't get into this kind of gap again?
So I think that's going to come up as part of the budget discussion later this year. That is a very large conversation, both fiscally and just, it would take revising some council policies But yes, that's a conversation we need to have.
And we didn't reserve enough money or capital reserves? I mean, usually we budget over the years and have enough money there. We just missed it? Or the prices went up too fast, or we decided not to?
No, so it's a combination of two things. The first is the way we capitalize something is we take by city policy, when we purchase a piece of equipment, we give the invoice to the finance department. They take the value of that equipment, and that is the value that gets capitalized. So for a 2004 piece of equipment that we're now trying to buy in 2022, we capitalize the price from 2004. So there's no escalation associated with this. For most of the smaller equipment, when we surplus the old equipment, it's sufficient to pay for the increase in cost over time, most of the time. That's not globally true, but most of the time that is. So that is part one. And then part two is this piece of equipment was eligible to, depending on which one we're talking about, either 17 or 18. We stopped collecting reserves in that time period. So everything that's related to inflation and cost increases since that time, there's been no additional funding accrued for this. So we've been fiscally responsible in the sense that we did not replace something prematurely, but on the same token, we didn't continue to collect funding to offset the increase in price from that time.
So a couple more questions. So is that a ticking time bomb? Have we not been collecting reserves for everything in the city or just in this department?
No, the city policy is the same unilateral.
So a bigger question than, the money here. Have we not been collecting reserves based on inflation for equipment going forward from 2017? Is that what I heard you say?
So it's whatever year we were supposed to replace the piece of equipment. So it's all over the board. We have equipment that was supposed to be replaced in 2012 that we are still operating. We have a couple trailers that were supposed to be replaced in the late 90s that we're still using. So we haven't collected reserves on any of them since they were capitalized.
Wow. Probably something we should be thinking about in this budget.
And I can add to that in finance, we've been looking at that exact thing, because you would want to take a vehicle that lasts 20 years and plan to put away 1/20th every year. And the same thing with 5-year vehicles and 7-year vehicles. And really that tells you how much you should budget to spend and replace in a perpetual rotation, because with city budgeting, you have to make it perpetual. You just have to.
Okay.
We agree with you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Committee members, Norton and then Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you for your presentation, Director Walsh. So where are you proposing that we get the funding from the ARPA grant?
I'm going to let
No.
Director Groom answer this one.
No, we don't want to use ARPA. We want to take care of vehicle replacement funding on its own the way that we should. The money for the cost increase isn't in the budget, and we don't have the authorization to spend money that's not in the budget unless we come to you. So we're just being very transparent
I
here.
apologize for
No,
not
no,
paying better
no,
attention.
No, thank you for asking.
A couple of questions. One is that it sounds like with the discussion of how our policy should be, I mean, is it possible to have it so that the policy takes with capitalizing things, and I don't know really the right terminology, but takes into account inflation so that we are better prepared for that instead of just capitalizing it to what the original purchase price was?
Policy level is exactly where you guys live and operate, so staff needs to bring to you a proposal to recommend a different methodology, and I'd love to make sure that it works perpetually. Working with EJ.
Okay. All right. And then secondly, with the chipper in particular, I mean, nearly twice the price. Are there other brands or anything that should be taken a look at, or?
We did. Yeah.
I figured that would be your answer.
Yeah.
I thought I'd be remiss not to ask.
So there's only one that's on state contract, which is this one. So we did go out and look at. We have NJPA, and then what used to be called Sourcewell. It's got a new name. I'm drawing a blank on it, which is the federal purchasing contract, as well as the Texas purchasing co-op agreement that we're also party to. So we looked at all of those. Frankly, this is the most cost-efficient one.
Okay, thank you.
And one last question. So we have the money in the reserves to buy it. You're just asking us to authorize it to take it from the pot to make up the difference.
That's correct, and we'll course correct on the budget going forward, absolutely.
Oh, I didn't see your line. Go
Thank
ahead.
you. Thank you. So in 2018, was the true cost for this really 41,680?
No, it was probably closer to 60 at that point.
Okay. So do you think,
It was 41,000 when we bought it in 2005.
okay, oh, okay, all right. Then I don't have another question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that we move ahead and authorize the spending of the dollars for these two pieces of equipment.
To the June 28th consent agenda. I second that motion.
We need to fix the date, right?
If it says June
Oh, it says
28th, we
June
certainly
28th.
do.
Is that June
Oh,
28th?
It should
that
be
needs to
July 5th.
July 5th. Should be
Okay.
July 5th.
Isn't today June 28th?
You said, June
So
28th.
Jack, you need to,
Yeah, my-
you need
my
to say,
thing went away
oh,
and
I move to forward option 1 to the July what? July
5th.
5th consent agenda for approval.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, any other discussion, question for EJ? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
Item C, Safe City, okay, I'm gonna try to pronounce it. Avicholon server?
Close. A
Close
Vigilon.
enough?
Yeah, very close.
Okay.
Good evening. Chair Tran, committee members, deputy mayor, council president, council members. Before you, I don't have a fancy PowerPoint presentation. This is pretty matter of fact, but one added piece of value for the previous conversation is this exact same conversation you just had about assets applies to IT devices as well. You know, the commoditization of computers and servers and whatnot kept getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and better and faster, and then it kind of reached this point where it's no longer that. So things are getting more expensive. So anyway, going to the item before you tonight is one of those things that has gotten a little bit more expensive as well as time has gone on. The Vigilon Safe City server. This is a grant-funded request from the 2018 Edward Bryan Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, or as we refer to it as the JEG grant. This is something that police applies for and receives, usually on an annual basis. This particular amount is $31,394 for, quote, safe city server and network infrastructure. This server is part of what stores all the data and processes the information for our safe city camera system. We are purchasing it from a local vendor, Security Solutions, off the Washington Learning Source Agreement, which is a new one that council approved for use on May 3rd of this year. So the total cost of the server is not to exceed $30,390.90. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Committee members, any questions, council members? I don't see any.
I propose that we move it to approval, the proposed Safe City Avalon server to be purchased from the Security Solutions for amount not to exceed $30,390. And move it to the consent agenda on July 5th.
Second.
Okay.
I
we have-
second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving along to item E. Oh, sorry. Item D, purchase of portable surveillance camera trailer.
Good evening, council members. Commander Tracy Grossnell from the Police Department. Tonight, the question before you, should the City of Federal Police Department purchase 2 surveillance camera trailers for criminal activity deterrence and investigation? Okay. A little bit background information, as part of the Federal Police Department's mission statement is always looking forward towards innovative ways to positively impact criminal activity and do so in an efficient manner. One way to accomplish this will be through the purchase of 2 portable surveillance camera trailers. These trailers will be used in partnership with local businesses and property owners to address and reduce criminal activity in various locations throughout the city. The trailers will supplement our police officers and be connected to the Vigilon Safe City system program to document and better identify possible suspects. This type of deployment is similar to other temporary surveillance installations that are occurring now. We have found our current crime deterrent camera operations to be well received and welcomed by our businesses and organizations in the city. Business owners and property managers regularly ask for surveillance assistance in the ongoing effort to mitigate criminal behavior. The money for this will be coming out of the federal seizure funds and primarily operated and maintained by our Special Investigations Unit within the police department. The question before you tonight is whether, again, approve the purchase or do not approve the purchase and provide direction. I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Commander. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. If we were to put one of these in a parking lot and somebody was stealing a catalytic converter up from underneath a car and we saw him, would we be able to prosecute?
It's maybe not that easy as a yes or no question.
Or a maybe question?
Yes, we could.
The reason I'm asking this question, here's why I'm asking the question. I was at a local business today, and he said, hey, we had 8 catalytic converters stolen from our parking lot over the last 30 days. And he says, nobody can do anything about it. So I'm asking, is this enough evidence if you actually saw somebody in the
It
daylight?
would definitely give us a better advantage to try and do it. Without anything, we have no witnesses.
Right.
So they're just doing it and walking away. Right, with the Vigilance system, it's documented, it's recorded for at least up to a week, and it can be bookmarked for pretty much eternity. With the camera system that we have and the cameras that are on board this, we've already talked to our IT. They mesh completely with them. They're high-resolution cameras.
I know.
So it'll definitely increase our potential to, 1, possibly deter it from occurring in the first place, and then 2, possibly identify and
It's sticky in here, too.
investigate and apprehend criminals.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. So I have a couple questions. First of all, the federal seizure funds, can you explain what that is and where that is accounted for in the budget? And
Okay.
my second question is, the surveillance trailers we see in parking lots now of stores with the blue flashing lights, is this similar to that?
Yes, very similar. The ones that we have recommended are on state contract, GSA contract. They're also have been approved or recommended by our IT in that they do have the proper cameras that we already have in our Vigilon system. They'll mesh and connect to our Vigilon system. The ones that we see out there right now do not connect to our Vigilon. So we're at the mercy of, take for example, if we have one right now, we have to actually call get a hold of the business, find out who their vendor is for that particular trailer. The last time we did that, it took up to 3 days, depending on because it depends on how the resolution is, what it's set at, how many frames per minute, per second, whatever they happen to be set at. And then depending on that, there's a lot of unknowns that we have to deal with. Whereas these specific trailers, they're part of our Vigilon. We know what they're about. We can move them. We can move the cameras. We can do whatever. So we can complete control of these cameras.
So when they're in the parking lot of a business, how far does the camera go? Can it visualize the whole parking lot?
Obviously, as you span out, it's going to get pixelated. But I believe these are pretty good cameras. I hate to say it, Thomas. You did more of the technical research than I did.
We did a little bit. So so Deputy Mayor, to answer that question, I don't remember exactly offhand which one we spec, but there's 2 cameras that are going to be on that with option to grow more. It's got local recording, and then the 2 cameras, I believe we structured it so that it is. Oh, this is perfect. Okay. Yep. So our same deployment that we use for every intersection that we try to deploy, we have a multi-sensor. So it's a single camera that has multiple views. In this case, it's 4 cameras inside of one. So it'll get 360 degrees. But it's a pretty wide angle shot. And we use that for situational awareness. So that way, if you see a car come in, you've got one camera looking in all 360 degrees all times. And that's recorded. Then we paired that with a pan tilt zoom camera that can actually, it's one lens, one point of view, but it can also move, pan, tilt, and zoom into something for real-time analysis. So if one of the officers needs to, they get a call over dispatch, something's going on in that parking lot or that business that it's stationed at, they can jump onto the thing in the system that they know how to use, call up that camera, and then they can actively move in and zoom. So to kind of answer both Councilmember Dovey's and your question about like the kind of prosecuting side of things, situational awareness is what it is. You know, you're going to be able to see a person and a car, kind of depending on the conditions, light, dark. You know, is it nighttime? Is it daytime? But with the pan tilt zoom, if something were to happen in real time, you can actually zoom in. It's got a 36x, so it's quite powerful to be able to zoom in. So if a car was within, I would say probably from your point of view out to, you might be able to pull a plate at the beginning of our driveway.
Oh, wow.
So it's, that would probably be its extent. That's a best case scenario. But again, that would have to be moved in real time. The situational awareness cameras won't be able to do that.
Can these be set up with the same equipment that identifies if a car has been reported stolen?
At this time, no.
Okay.
It's not an LPR camera. So the conditions have to be even more specific. Not to say that you can't, but an LPR camera is something that is stationary, it's fixed, it's got to set up in a particular area. And it's custom set up for that particular scene. And then we have like a subset, we have to apply a license to that view and to be able to do like the optical character recognition, or OCR, basically take the wording of the plate and then run that against the database. So it's a lot more complex, and
Okay.
in this type of mobile deployment, it probably would not be as successful.
One more question. Is there anything on this trailer that if somebody needed emergency help and didn't have a phone, so they couldn't reach out
No.
and call 911? Okay.
No. It has obviously air card connections and stuff for the video, but no other connections at all.
Okay. And the federal seizure funds?
The Federal Seizure Fund is actually money that is incurred by us through VNet, through our connection with VNet and stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I believe it's not really it's a separate line in our budget. Is that correct?
It's a very restricted fund. We have to have a restricted revenue, and it's not only subject to audit, it's also subject, I think, to Department of Justice. We have to do annual reporting.
So do we ever see how much is in that account?
I'm sorry?
Do we, as a council, ever see that account and see how much?
I don't know that it's a separate fund at the fund level. And Chase is away from a microphone, so I can't answer. But
Okay. Just wondering, because I know other things have been purchased through it, so just wondering how much is in there.
the accounting system, we always know it. Do we bring it to council very often? I'm not sure I know.
Okay, thank you.
I'll be honest with you.
Thank you very much.
So, and I guess to also add on your question about the cameras and stuff, we've had very good success with our Safe City camera system on different crimes and stuff. We've caught some very major shootings, stabbings, auto theft, and had great prosecution with that. And those are our fixed locations. What we're helping with these two is be able to move them to problem areas and be more proactive and innovative in that matter.
Committee members, Norm, go ahead.
Okay, I think you already answered my question was, where are they going? So, for example, there's someone who owns a car lot where there's a lot of different shops and they're getting hit on an almost daily basis, it would be in a place like that, is
Yeah,
that correct?
we're proposing to use these in locations, partnering with our businesses and property owners in the high crime areas that are occurring. And that's why we have them up all along Pack Highway, and that's nice in the intersections, but that's not always where the crime occurs.
Right.
So we're hoping to work with maybe, you know, you have Lowe's and Home Depot that already have theirs.
Right.
Put them in other places to maximize their effect.
Okay, and then I have one more question. Even though you may have already answered it, will they so are they gonna be monitored by dispatch 24/7 when they're on? Is this the kind of thing where a crime is taking place, somebody's underneath a car, they're cutting off something? Is this, because when I visited, the police area of the building, I saw that there were people who were monitoring screens. And is that gonna be something that will be part of that system?
It is part of it will be part of that system. It'll be with all the Safe City cameras. And it will be accessible to our records or
police.
anybody that has a Vigilon on their computers in the city.
So so if someone at dispatch sees a crime being committed, then they'll say,
Well, they're not connected to dispatch.
oh,
Dispatch doesn't have any connections with our Vigilon. Our records does.
so how, is it possible for them to actually be stopped in the process of doing the crime?
There is. I mean, if we have an officer or a police personnel that is either in our Safe City room and happens to be monitoring it, we do have a couple of volunteers that go in there and they do historical searches for us on past events, and they also have the TV screens in front of them. So if it happens to be going on when they're there, the other part that we have is if someone calls in and says, "Hey, we've got someone doing something in this parking lot that's kind of weird," then either one of our officers or our records people or someone usually will jump on the Safe City system that's
Okay.
already up.
And then they can send
And they can connect to this camera and start watching and recording and zoom in and do all of that.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Mr. Dovey and then Mr. Walsh.
I just have one more question. Since this is coming from, I guess, seized funds, either drugs or whatever it is, do we have enough money to buy 4 of them? Why are we only buying 2?
Obviously, they're the first ones. It's $105,000 for 2 of them.
Yeah, that's
They're-
only
they're-
50 grand
they're
to
not-
stop
they're not-
crime. That's
they're-
not
yeah.
much.
We're trying to be fiscally responsible and try them out and see how they do the first couple of times.
But if these work and they're only 50 grand and you got the money,
We could add more.
is the plan to, add more?
It very well could be, yes.
And what's the delivery time on these things?
I don't know what I think let's say a month, probably.
A month?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, it would seem to me that you're going to get great success, and we should not be fiscally I mean, if it's federal money we're getting from seizing, and it's not coming out of our budget, we should be proactive more than just saying we want to.
And I would respectfully add that the chief, who isn't here, every penny that's on balance probably has plans for it, and I wouldn't presume to know what they are. But across the whole city, every fund, if it's got a balance, it's got some future plans to it. And we'll look at it during the budget. Thanks.
Chair Tran, one thing to Councilmember Norton's, or committee member Norton in this role, question. We have a pilot program right now going on with Steel Lake Maintenance. These cameras have a technology called analytics baked into them. And so what that allows is basically you can set up a rule on a camera that says if you detect something,
Right.
do something, okay, throw an alert. And so with this pilot program that we're using, we actually have it hooked into a monitoring system that, like an alarm system like ADT, only for cameras and for video surveillance. And so what that does is it relies on the technology of the camera that triggers if a person is detected or a vehicle is detected in a particular area, and you set that all up, then throw an alert. And then just like your alarm going off at home, that's sent to the monitoring system. They can get on in real time and look at something and then call dispatch. So these have that capability. Again, that's a service that we'd have to pay additional for, but it's something that we actually are piloting at one of our facilities.
So would that be software that you could purchase? Because, okay, my husband works at the UW and he is a building manager. So they have the analytics, and they spent a few $1 million on redoing the tower. And so they have it so that they can search for a certain baseball cap with a letter on it. And I mean, it's actually a little scary, to be honest with you, how in-depth these cameras are, to the point where people were like, hey, you know, this is going against our privacy kind of thing. But I mean, they can say, I want a person whose hair is 3 inches long, wearing a white top and blue pants, find them, and the analytics will find that. Is that something that's possible with these cameras? Or, I mean, are they that good, or is that software you can purchase, or is that something you have to rent and keep paying for over time?
It's a great question, and so that's, in the Avigilon terminology, analytics is different than appearance search. And
Okay.
appearance search is more person with a blue shirt, or a car that's blue, or a truck that's blue, or something of that nature. And so it's not as granular as, you know, hair being 3 inches long,
Okay.
or as detailed as that. But all of this feeds back into the server that you just approved. And we have a whole bunch of them. This will be our 7th server, so we're adding this huge amount of processing power for this stuff, because all of that, like you just described, takes a lot of effort and a lot of processing compute power.
Right.
But long story short is, yes, it's I shouldn't say that it's in its infancy. We've had it for a while, but it's like, if you the problem with our cameras and the way that we deploy them is, again, a lot of them are designed for situational awareness. Okay, so we have the camera. If you drive around the city, they're mounted up to the top of a street light pole. And that's usually like 35 feet up. And so when you have a camera 35 feet up, a car, you know, is small. And so it's harder for the camera to pick detail off of that and be able to analyze like a black car versus a black truck. And so you can run that search and it'll return a whole bunch of results, and it's good. It's not perfect, but it's good. And so, yes, these cameras will feed into that, and we have
Okay.
that type of capabilities.
Because from what I understand, from what I'm just telling you what my husband has told me what their cameras do, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is insane.
Yeah.
So what happens is, something happens, it's unusual activity, they get an alert, so their security guard gets an alert on their screen, and then they touch something that says, keep following that person. And so it does like gait recognition, and like even the way the person walks. So even if you have a mask on, it'll recognize you from that. And that's what I was asking about. I mean, is that something, because you said it would alert. So is that something that you could program it to do, just to be to follow the person, and then maybe the other cameras could catch? And I know I'm asking, oh, hey, can you hire a whole nother person to do a whole nother job right now? Yeah. But I'm just asking, is that something that's capable with what you're purchasing right now?
In short answer, not exactly to that level of detail.
Okay.
Can we get somewhat close? More or less, yes. But as it is laid out before you, the way that it's set up, none of that additional monitoring or service is kind of set up in real time. So that's a
Okay.
separate subscription, separate piece of thing that we would have to
Okay.
do. But the cameras themselves have the technology that feeds into that. Again, not to that level of detail or that, you know, like, what is it, Mission Impossible, where they're talking
Yeah,
about
but if
big
we
things.
wanted it, we could get it, is what I'm asking.
With our current system, again, it's not to that level of detail. Like gate speed, like we don't, right now, they don't have the technology built in to measure gate speed, but it's close. It's
Okay.
close to that, it's just not to that detail.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Roche.
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. First, just to clarify, this is the first 2 trailers of this type that the city will have purchased, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then secondly, how prone will they be to vandalism?
You know, we honestly don't know. The ones at Lowe's and stuff, knock on wood, they've been pretty good. We are, in the recommendation, you'll see they have chain guard, so they'll be chained up through the axle and stuff, so they won't be able to tow them. The hitch will be removable. The camera system will actually be up 25 feet up in the air, so unless you break the whole thing down, you're not going to get the camera system itself. The generator and those parts will be locked away. We are also recommending that we decal it with the Safe City logo and not the police logo, kind of an intentional move. That way it doesn't become a target just because with the police badge or icon.
Okay, yeah. I was just wondering, in the back of my business, I have a camera. It's 18 feet up, and it was, I have no idea how they did it. I mean, on video, we saw somebody walking up towards it. They got under where you couldn't see it. They weren't carrying anything that we could see. And then suddenly, you see the camera moving all around and it went dead.
Took it
And
out.
then they were able to just to vandalize and destroy a camera that was 18 feet up. And so anyway, so that was,
No, and we're hoping that with the cameras connected to the Vigilance system and stuff, if something does happen like that, we'll maybe be able to prevent that or catch them in the process, or at least get the video evidence of them enough that we can arrest them and stuff.
okay. All right, thank you.
Great, good questions. All right,
I move to forward the approval of the purchase of the portable surveillance camera trailers to the July 5th, 2022 consent agenda.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Seeing none, hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter passed 3-0. Thank you, Commander. All right, now we are moving to item E, AP vouchers 5/16/2022 to 6/15/2022, and payroll voucher from May 1st, 22 until May 31st, 22.
Good evening, Council Chair Tran, Deputy Mayor Honda, and Council Committee members. Before you are the AP vouchers in the total amount $4,175,562.31, and payroll vouchers in the amount of $3,962,977.06. We did respond to Deputy Mayor Honda's email that she sent earlier to each of the council members describing some of those questions, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions you have on the voucher list. And that concludes my report.
Deputy Mayor, you satisfied with the answers?
I am, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Can I make a motion?
Yes, please.
I move to forward the May 2022 monthly financial report to the July 5, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Matter pass 3-0.
Thank you.
We are on item F. Tourism Enhancement Grant Recommendation 2022, Evergreen District Barbershop Harmony Society.
And when you think
Director
barbershop,
Groomer.
you think me. Why am I standing at the podium? Tim Johnson, Tim Johnson normally would be presenting this item. This item comes out of the Lodging Tax and Advisory Committee, the LTAC. City Administrator Brian Davis is technically the staff liaison in Tim's absence, but we both attended the meeting. I think I lost the coin toss, or won, I don't know. I have a fair amount of interest in lodging tax. It's one of the city's revenues, right? So as you may know, the RCWs are very specific when it comes to restricted spending of lodging tax, even up to the balanced composition of the committee. There needs to be an even number of tax collectors, which is the hoteliers, and recipients, or even just eligible recipients. And the LTAC committee is chaired by a council member, that's Council Member Asifa Dawson. The applicant, as you can see in your packet, is a regional arts association that is hosting a regional barbershop harmony competition among choruses and quartets at the Performing Arts and Event Center. Potentially, members from 49 groups from 5 states and 2 Canadian provinces could attend our city. And as you can see, the application forecasts 514 participants with 310 room nights. Now, as far as state statutes are concerned, all I needed to have said was 310 room nights. The LTAC committee is tasked with upholding the city's integrity, making sure that lodging tax revenue that comes from overnight hotel stays is spent to produce further overnight hotel stays. And our hoteliers know better than anyone in the city what produces, what events, what things produce overnight hotel stays. And during COVID, their sector has suffered the worst economic damage of any sector in the economy. So if anyone's, they are incentivized to advise the city how we can best direct lodging tax money. I will say I'm impressed with the professionalism and the integrity of the LTAC process. The applicant requested $5,000, which I thought was a modest amount. However, the committee graded their application on not just overnight room stays, but also the scope of the event, whether it was regional, national, and by their grading system, they recommended $3,000. And they were really focused on being committed to fairness and consistency across all their applicants. So on that basis, I'm passing on the committee's recommendation, and all I can do is confirm that it does fall within the existing adopted budget for the fund.
Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Did anyone else apply for funding this during this round?
No, this was the only applicant that they reviewed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dovey?
Along that same question line, we're halfway through the year. We've been collecting this tax for 6 months. This is the only applicant. How much money is left in the fund to promote these type of activities, and do we anticipate that we'll spend it all this year?
Again, every penny in every fund has got future plans, and that one has got some capital spending, I think, related to Celebration Park field turf, if I recall. I hesitate to speak for the committee, but I think whenever we adopt the budget, you want us to bring the whole picture. So I think at the budget time is when we need to be looking at what the eligible uses are and what the plans are for the money, because there is a fund balance building up.
The only reason I asked the question, when I chaired this committee for many, many years, we gave money away, I believe, every quarter.
Yeah.
And this is the first time, I know they've had a hard time meeting, and this is the first time we've ever given any grants away, so
Sure.
unless it's allocated for future things like diving champions or whatever, I'm just wondering if there's
Sure,
money sitting there we should give them 5,000 instead of 3 if we're gonna have money left over at the end of the year.
I think the committee was focused on their consistent and fairness on their grading system, not on how much money was there at the time.
Deputy Mayor?
Can I comment?
And
Sure.
yeah, the chair of the committee, yes.
Sorry.
Yes, Steve, you just answered that question actually for Councilmember Dovey, and that was the concern they had was about fairness. And we can open the grant, I'm sorry, I hope you can hear me. We can also open the grant to other interested parties. There's still time, because there's another round in October. So there's an opportunity for for other entities to apply for this grant. So, and because of that, and we don't want, the committee did not want to set precedents to raise it to 5,000, which would have been the amount they requested. And so when other applicants come through, you want to make sure that there's enough funds and that the grant requests would meet the requirements to either grant them at the level they're requesting. So the committee did not want to start that kind of a precedence, although there's only one applicant at this point. And so following what they've done in the past, which was around 3,000, is why that was the recommended amount.
Thank you.
And you would want to direct anybody who's interested to visit the Visit Federal Way website, which is visitfw.org. That's where the application is, and the process is explained, quite a bit of detail.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Deputy Mayor and then Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. When the position for Economic Development Director is filled, is this going to be still in that department, or does it make more sense to have it in another department?
I don't have an answer to that one. That's
Okay.
not a finance question. I don't have that one.
All right. I'm just wondering. So, all right, thank you.
Do you have a suggestion?
I might, but we'll talk later.
How much in that fund, in the LTAC fund, how much is there, and typically annually, what size is the fund?
It really dipped down. The revenue pre-COVID was about $300,000 per year, and the committee, I believe on the application website, says that it typically aims to, well, it budgets to give out $65,000 per year. During COVID, the hotel tax revenue dipped in half to 150,000, and so they're recovering.
Okay. And what types of things is it, is eligible to be expensed with that?
You know, I am,
Maybe Councilmember Lydia Seffi-Dawson can answer that.
Yeah, I'm trying to be careful, but it's activities and events that bring, put heads in beds in our community. So that is one requirement. And about 3 years ago, they changed the radius of people coming into our city for these events. And so that has really impacted how these grants could go out, because that is one of the requirements from the state. So actually, that was also another consideration when they said we'll only fund them at the 3,000, because it does not guarantee that it's going to put heads in beds and support these hotels in our community. So that's one of the requirements. And then it's just events that bring people into our city, where it generates funds for, like either, when people come in, they use our restaurants, they use our, they go shopping. And so it's just something that would generate and bring people into our community or to our city. So when you think of events, that usually does that. And then when we've had competitions, that's also something that brings people into our city. So you just want to think about activities like that would bring people to spend their money here in our community.
and because this is funded by hotel tax, you're exactly right. The radius that they look at applicants is a 50-mile. They look at people that are coming from beyond 50 miles. And the things that qualify have to fall in 4 categories. One of them, you can spend it on tourism marketing. Second thing is you can spend it on marketing and operations of special events and festivals designed to attract tourists. The third thing, this is interesting because we're a city, you can support the operations and capital expenditures of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by a municipality. And then lastly, you can support the operations of tourism-related facilities owned or operated by nonprofit organizations. I brought the RCWs.
Thank you.
I just needed time to pull it out of my back pocket.
Okay, you ready?
So I think that's the main thing, is about bringing people into our community and, tourism being that. So if we can, if you're going to recommend people to apply, I think just keeping that in mind would be the best way to encourage applicants. Thank you.
All right.
Well, okay, I move to forward the tourism enhancement request grant to July 5th, 2022 consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any other questions or discussion? Here are none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The matter passed 3-0. Thank you.
May I
And-
ask a question?
Yes.
On the vouchers, the motion was to approve the monthly financial report, but that's what we're just hitting on right now?
Yeah, I was wondering the
So
same
it
thing.
should have been
Should
the
be with
monthly voucher
vouchers.
report.
Yeah. I was wondering the same thing.
Does that need to be redone, or is it,
Probably.
If you want to make the motion again, either way, I think we talked a lot about that item, so I think it's pretty clear which item we're talking
Okay.
about. But for clarity's sake, if you want to make the motion again, it doesn't hurt.
I move to forward the May 2022 monthly financial vouchers to the July 5th, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. You have the last item, sir.
Monthly financial report. I thought I'd bring a little bar chart to show you how far along we are in the year. It's not much of a chart, but that's what I've got. This report is for month 5 of 12. In your packet, as always, we give you a status report on how we're doing with revenues and how we're doing with expenditures. And as of the May month-end close, our revenues were up 4.1%. Our expenditures were also favorable, 1.1%. We also kind of show it as a graph. Both are favorable. And that's not unusual. That's pretty much what it's looked like for the past few months. And I'm also not going to show a lot of those charts that have a budget wedge to them. I'm just going to give you a summary table here that shows that sales tax on a budget of 17 million, and you can see each of these. These are our most material dollar amounts in the budget. How they're doing compared to how the actuals are doing compared to budget, and how they're doing to prior year, and they are all favorable. Sales tax, utility tax, property tax, permits and fees, business licenses are all in the general fund, and then read and lodging tax, those are separate restricted funds. The only one that's negative is permits and fees, and that's only when you compare to prior years, so we must have had a very good amount of revenue last year. We budgeted conservatively, and we're ahead of budget this year. As always, we meet with the departments. They are all managing to their annual budgets. They are course correcting, responding to service needs within the current budgets. They are now looking at how they're going to do towards the year end, and citywide we are staying, as you saw, within budget by 1.1%. The little bit of news on the cash balance trend is you can see a little bump up in our cash balance in May, and that's because we got the second half of the amount of money that we were expecting from ARPA. They dispersed the second half of the 19.2 million, so that means we got, 9.6 million. It's in the bank. How and when we spend it, that's up to partially you to approve, and then also for staff to go ahead and disperse on it. And then, as always, we continue to work on our investing slowly, methodically. Interest rates have been going up substantially. We don't want to invest too much too soon because we expect interest rates to go further. However, as of May, we have budgetable, predictable interest for next year's budget of $800,000. That's quite a bit more than what we anticipated when we first described our investment program. The amount that's coming from the locked-in investments that we've purchased, that's $392,000. That is fixed and certain. We get coupon payments once every 6 months. And then the amount that's in the state pool is $416,000, and with interest rates rising, we expect that to go up. That's the variable component. So I just want to keep you informed. 800,000 is significant to our budget. So the status of how we're doing in the current year is we're on track. There's a thin margin for flexing service levels. Every department is eyeing carefully how they're dealing with surprises and unexpected events to stay within their current budget. We're monitoring revenues, and we're also monitoring the economic climate and cycle. Little bit of outlook for our upcoming budget. I happen to love this graph. Sherry found this, and I think this is so perfect. How are we going to stay focused on what we have to accomplish amidst chaos and confusion and distraction? Boy, if that slide doesn't illustrate how to work on creating a budget. The latest budget figures coming out of the Department of Commerce is the last month was 8.6% over prior year. That means for over 12 months now, the inflation figures have been over 5%. And so, we're watching it every month. It's not good news, and we know that Treasury is working on I guess the Federal Reserve is working on changing the money supply and raising rates to fight inflation. We will continue to watch that. Internally, staff has been busy. We had an internal kickoff meeting. As you know, finance has been forecasting revenue since January, but I've got two little things here with our little red asterisk. All departments are now assessing their needs. I've asked them to tell us what's not in the budget. When I came and interviewed for the job here 11 months ago, one of my questions was, department heads, what's not in the budget? I can go look online and see the city budget and see what revenue covered the expenses, but what aren't we covering? That's a frustrating exercise for most departments, because that means that they are coming, why would they dig deep and put in the effort when, it's probable that they're just not going to get much different? And the answer is, we want to have a really good assessment of what the needs are in each department at the grassroots level, at the front line of, services in parks and streets and public works and planning. They all know what the pressures are. We are assuming a baseline budget. We are just assuming that the increases in revenue will hopefully cover the increases, the known increases in expenses. So that's the exercise that we're going through internally, and we will work on that internally and then bring that to you in a series of budget workshops later in the year. We're asking departments to prioritize the unmet service demands that they see, but ultimately budget has got to match revenue. And I say that we're going to be looking at a baseline revenue, but there are obligations, and you all know them. Insurance premiums go up every year, election costs increase, health benefits, there's software licensing and other contracts that we just, I can tell them they have to have the same budget as they had last year. However, there's contractual obligations that we're going to have to just make sure that we address. There's also scheduled replacement costs, and that even has to do with things like streets and lighting systems. So here's a simple graph. The shoe tells the foot how big it can grow. You mean to tell me we can't approve expenses unless we have the revenue to cover it? That's why I keep looking at $800,000 of interest revenue. It's a small contribution, but it's a positive, and we also know that we're watching sales tax and how the local economy is doing. So we do see some positives, and what we're able to approve with expenses is going to be determined by our revenue. Join me on a journey of discovery. How much will revenues increase? How much will existing expenses and obligations go up? I'm not going to be the only person telling you. As we go through budget workshops, our best guides are going to be people that are working in each of the departments at the city. We will come up with a balanced proposed budget. The mayor has to have that on file September 1st, and after that, through September and October, I know the city clerk is looking at calendars and dates, and we're looking at topics. I was talking to Brian Davis earlier today about which topics we want to bring. We will have subsequent department briefings, and that's when you'll have, not me, but the people that actually run the departments and the programs. We want to give time to that process, to those meetings, to take your master plan. I think you were just talking about a few items tonight. How do you know what to approve unless you see the big picture? If you have a limited space in your backyard, you're thinking about adding a pool or a shed, you want to know what you're going to do for the next 10 years, what you want to master plan. So the city budget is kind of like that. So that's my report on the status of our finances and on where we're at on the budget process. We're looking forward to coming to you soon. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Committee members, go ahead.
Thank you for that detailed report, and I also wanted to thank you for including actual numbers in this time. It made it a lot easier for me to understand. So, you put 8.6% inflation on your report, and I understand that that's what the government is telling us it is. And according to new math, that's also correct. But what I did was I took receipts from this year, because I buy the same stuff all the time, and then I took receipts from last year, and I averaged out the percentage of the increase. So for my inflation rate at my house is 38%. That's realistic. So what I'm asking you is it possible for us as a city to sit and, when we're doing the budget, to be realistic with what the prices are for us, not what the government says it is, and say, well, it's going to be 8.6%. If we could just say, okay, well, gas is twice as much as it was. Pens were $5, now they're $7. Just something like that, or a jug of water that goes in the water thing. It was $30 last year, now it's $50. Is it possible for us, when we're looking and calculating the next couple years' budget, to be a little more realistic with that, or are we going to stick with what we're being told by the feds?
Absent a crystal ball, yes, we can get a lot right. And, you know, you look at the Pareto principle. That's the one that says if you focus on the 20% of the most important things, you can get 80% of what you're trying to accomplish. Salaries is a very large percentage of our budget. And when you think of police, you know, that's a service, and our public works, that's a service. So we have got an existing staff, and we can, you know, we know what our step increases are gonna be. We know, and we can look at, you know, every employee by employee. And we can budget fairly realistically. Now, there's gonna be turnover, there's gonna be attrition, there's gonna be change, but we can get most of it right, and that's a big chunk of the budget right there. There is also some things like vehicles. EJ, you know, and the Parks Department and I, vehicle replacement on a perpetual basis is a really big deal. And I just described in a very simplistic way, if we take 1/20th of our 20-year trucks and 1/7 of our police patrol cars and whatnot, we should be able to determine how much we need to spend every year. Now, that's where we need to look at the people who know, you know, we're looking at the purchasing contracts and things that we're piggybacking on, because we know we'll get the best prices, but it's predicting the future that's going to be tough. And yet, I think we can estimate, and looking at each of the pieces, I think we can get a lot right. Now, it's the moment we adopt the budget, there's going to be some things that pop up, things are going to happen in the real world, and we'll have to course correct, and we bring budget amendments to you all the time for that. So there's going to be some uncertainty, but I think we can get a big bulk of the budget reasonably in the ballpark, and that'll position us well. We also look at all of our fund balances, and we have got a lot of fiscal strength to draw upon to get through some stuff. None of that gives you any guarantees, but I think we can get a lot right, and we've got some real subject matter experts in each of our departments, and they know what the world is looking like, and they're talking to other cities, you know, what they're thinking
Okay.
for the price of things.
Would you say that economic forecasting is your specialty? Is that, do you consider that to be part of your job? Or, because I don't know, I didn't hire you, and you know what I'm saying? I'm just asking.
I'm a synthesizer. We take all the data that we can. Do I consider myself a subject matter expert? No, I don't. But in the city finance world, there's a lot of people that we are connected to, so we can tap into a lot of brain trust, and we'll still get it wrong, but we'll do a very credible job. We'll represent the city well, and we'll be realistic, and we'll try to create a budget that we can achieve, and if things change, we will course correct.
Okay, and thank you for always answering my myriad of questions.
Can you make them not so hard, please?
You're my favorite. Seriously, thank you. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
I thought I was your favorite.
Oops.
Sorry. You're my favorite woman.
Oh.
Deputy Mayor? And then
So I
Mr.
have
Dovey.
a concern. I'm going to read what is in this report. Expenditures are trending back to pre-pandemic levels compared to year-to-date budget. Expenditures are still trending favorably, primarily due to the delay of hiring temporary staff for parks, summer activities, the filling of police department vacant positions, and timing of expenditures in departments. We see this all the time. I mean, this is something that's very standard. We see it all the time.
And we know Parks isn't 1/12 every month, right?
But it concerns me that, so for the police department, we're supposed to have 140 officers. How many do we have now? And how many do we have now? How many do we actually have hired that we are paying their salaries and benefits for?
Not this week, but last week, I believe Chief Wong said that we still had 10 vacancies. So they've been doing some hiring, and they, you know, I think they're gaining on the attrition or the replacement or the turnover. In addition to that, they started a special emphasis program. They call in early for shifts. They have shift extension. They have people stay late beyond shift. So there's some overtime, and then they have some overtime that is just authorized for special emphasis. They have continued that within their savings. So they're continuing to deliver admirably, I would say. So, boy, you know, you passed a budget 2 years ago, and we're not, you know, we're we're adapting. The police department's managing to a budget creatively. They still have 10 vacancies, and yet they are deploying officers a little extra in, whatever the chief is doing.
So the savings are from having 10 vacant positions?
Yes.
So I am truly concerned what will happen when we have all 140 hired, they all have their own vehicle, and we have to pay for gas, maintenance, all of that stuff. I'm really concerned about that. I'm also concerned about other vacant positions in the city. Do you know how many we have there? And I know those departments use that money too.
That one I don't know.
Okay,
You stumped me. You got me.
not trying to.
I know. Yeah, but, kind of the 80-20 thing, the police vacancies has been such a budget variance that we've given that a lot of scrutiny, we've had some discussion, and finance works with PD every month. We look at the overtime and the vacancies, and so that's something I just knew because we do talk about it internally.
Okay. And anyway, I want it out there. I'm really concerned about it. And secondly, I would like to thank you for including the previous years in some of these reports. Thank you very much, because it helps me look back and see what we're doing now and what we did in the past, and being able to compare. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Dovey?
Yeah, I just have a couple questions. The graphs or the tables in here are really good, but I used to remember that we used to have utility taxes and it was broken out when there was a title called cellular, and I didn't see that on there. What's that grouped under now? How much utility tax we get on cellular telephones?
There's several components of utility, and if.
Well, I know, you got the list here, it's great. It used to just be a line item, as I remember it always was cellular telephones, and I didn't see it. Is that grouped under cable now, or is it, I don't know where that would.
I'm gonna call a friend.
I think it's under other. Isn't there another category on?
Okay, so
Yeah.
maybe.
So some of the
instead-
smaller amounts got kind of grouped into one, because
because-
cellular has decreased over the years.
Okay, other was 663,000. I just was curious, cellular used to always be a big utility tax collector, so
It's decreased year over year.
even though the phones have gone crazy and more people have them.
Is that
I know.
phones, is that the phones themselves, or is that cell towers?
Cellular phones.
Okay.
Cellular phone, okay. And then, one thing that, I'll make a comment, following up on Councilmember Norton's comment. I was a little surprised when we heard earlier tonight about the way we reserve money to replace vehicles. And I'm maybe concerned, maybe more than I should be, that we have a tremendous amount of vehicles or assets that we haven't been allocating the proper replacement for.
I'm ahead of you on that one, too.
And I'd really like to
Yep.
know what that number could be. Very large if we were to catch it up, and I don't,
Yeah.
if we haven't been doing it, that's something in the budget season we'll really
Yes.
should look at very seriously.
Yeah, this is my fourth city, and one city that I've worked at really did a great job of it, and at finance conferences, that's a real topic, and we started talking about it in finance, and we are working with PD and Public
Yeah.
Works, and, yeah, because perpetual is the word I need to use. I mean, whether or not we saved for it or stopped saving, we have to have a plan for every single vehicle perpetually.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Which is a big math problem. It's a database problem, and you take the whole list of vehicles, it's a big number.
Yeah, with supply chains the way they are and all that stuff, it's not gonna get any better.
Right.
Okay.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes, back on the sales tax, and I've talked to you about this before. You have the sales tax by the different locations comparison. Have we found out anything yet on online sales and how that compares, where that fits in
We have.
to the total?
We have, and Councilman Walsh, let me share this. I have a couple answers. I really, in time for this meeting, I almost got to something I was comfortable with. Let me show you what I do have. I thought I might be putting this out as an email to you, but you did put me to work last week. last meeting. In 2018, the case, now see here, I'm going to start to sound like the city attorney. South Dakota versus Wayhair, the Supreme Court ruled that states can collect sales tax from out-of-state retailers, and in 2018, the marketplace fairness, that's my typo. See, I'm not ready to go public with this. The marketplace fairness law requires out-of-state retailers to collect and remit. So here in the state of Washington, they started migrating from origin-based to destination-based. What that means is retailers have to register their location, and they also have to report the customers where the product was delivered. And if it gets delivered, if the destination is inside the city limits, they have to do the reporting by destination. And that transition was required to be completed in 2019. Businesses register with the Department of Revenue by location, and that's who collects based on sales. The DOR, the Department of Revenue, audits. They're also our auditor. They audit approximately 110 jurisdictions each month. And when they've got odd location sales, they review them manually. So they assured me that their level of auditing is, they have a good structure and a process, and they are set up for checking outliers. There are also a handful of certified providers. If you were a business, and I clicked through on the Department of Revenue. There are providers that are certified by the Streamlined Sales Tax Governing Board, and that is, they've actually got specialists to help retailers remit and avoid compliance problems following the destination-based tax. That's as far as I got with my information that I have ready. Now, we also have a concern on whether we're getting sufficient online sales tax. This is confidential. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing wrong with. There we go. Sorry about that. The Department of Revenue can tell the city how much each retailer, and that includes online retailers. And I have to admit that the first report that I brought that showed by sector did not represent fairly. I can't say publicly, neither can they, what any particular online company, because Amazon and Walmart and Costco and Fred Meyer, those are all competitors. If you divulge the amount of sales tax collected, well, my goodness, all you have to do is divide by, 10.1 is the sales tax, or the 10.2, but our percent is, less, 3 point something. You can still, each of them can figure out what the other sales are. So, protected information, we can't show that. But I was able to get a lot better assurance than the first report I was looking at that led us to believe that we weren't getting much online. We're getting a lot of online. So that's the report that I have, that I can show publicly.
Okay. I mean, are we able to?
Remind me back of the question, because your face tells me, I don't think I've satisfied you.
So right here on the chart,
Yes.
we have the, Gateway Center, Pavilion Center, the
yes.
Commons, 312th to 316th, South 348th Retail Block. Mm-hmm. Why can't we have a online segment chart on that?
If I can figure out how to navigate their database better and bring a report that isn't misleading, I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, I think it's important to know that and see just exactly where the online sales fits in and how it impacts
Yeah.
the local retailers.
Yeah. I've seen figures for some of the online. We don't have an Apple store in our city, but we're getting sales tax from Apple. We don't have an Amazon store open, but we are getting sales tax from Amazon, and the Department of Revenue and their auditing, I'm satisfied with, but how to come up with a good way to report our online, I'm not there yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Certainly.
Can I make a motion?
Deputy Mayor.
Do other cities report the online tax revenue?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll phone a couple friends.
Okay, maybe phone AWC, ask them.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a good finance director network, and, you know, that's one of the good things about cities. We're not competing with each other. If somebody's got a good idea worth stealing, we'll steal it, and they'll be happy to share it.
All right,
Motion?
yes, ma'am.
I move to forward the May 22, gosh darn it, the May 2022 monthly financial report to the July 5th, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the matter passed 3-0, and that conclude our meeting for this month.
May I ask a question, though?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I know there was an ad hoc committee that was created to discuss what you wanted to do with the ARPA funds. Has that been presented to people yet, or have you guys figured something out, or
Mayor.
what's going on?
That, we discussed that yesterday in agenda setting. I was under the impression at our last meeting that it would be discussed at the July 5th council meeting, and staff, the numbers didn't match up. We still have way too many requests for what we have. And so staff was going to look at it and try to make it match a little bit better. They're not ready right now. I did request that it still come to us because much of it is the same as, I mean, it's not like we added things, you know, much of it is the same as what we all saw before. We haven't seen it for a while. So I am hoping that we do have a report next week just to look at, and it, definitely not voting on it, but just to look at it. I have no doubt that council will probably want to change things. They wanted to change things before, so I have no doubt that that will happen.
Okay, and my next question is this something that we're going to be discussing during the city council meeting, or are we gonna have special meetings where we talk about it before the city council meeting? I'm just asking, what are we going to, what's the actual process going to be about how we discuss
It would be at a council meeting,
it's gonna be during the council meeting? Okay,
an agenda item, yeah.
okay, thank you.
And I think much of the discussion is going to revolve around the $3 million that was, not the total amount, but the $3 million that was.
For the community? Okay, cool.
Great. Our next meeting is gonna be on July 26th at 5 p.m. In this room. With that, thank you, council members, committee members, and staff for being here, and the public for being here. All right,
Thank you.
have a good night. It's only 3 o'clock in
Bye-bye.
Barcelona.
That was so fun.
Night.